Okay, so we have a presentation for week 1 and we're going to do a little bit of slide basics. So we have here a PowerPoint presentation with a single slide. I can tell that it has a single slide because in the left-hand column in the navigation I see one thumbnail, which is basically a small picture of the slide that you see in the larger area here. So I have a single slide in the presentation, and this slide contains two placeholders, one for the title and one for the subtitle. So to add context or content to my slide, I'm going to click into the title placeholder, and I'm going to type in a title. This one I'm going to call Week 1. And I'm going to click into the subtitle placeholder, and I'm going to type in Prepared by, and then I'm going to put in my name. So that's how easy it is to add information to a PowerPoint slide. Now, of course, this is a title slide. It has a title layout, meaning it has placeholders for a title and placeholders for a subtitle. I have more information, obviously, I want to include in my presentation. So for that, I need to add a new slide. So I'm looking at my home ribbon and the new slide button. So I'm going to click new slide, and I'm presented with a choice of layouts. These 9 layouts are available to me right away, and I choose the one that's most appropriate for the content that I'm going to be introducing. And typically, layouts have a title and a content section, or in this case, a title and a subtitle section. So I'm going to choose a title and content slide, which is classic PowerPoint. I'm going to click Add Slide, and I have a new slide for more information. I always like to choose a title layout containing a placeholder. The reason for that is accessibility. It is important that each slide have a unique title or have a title so that screen readers can read a presentation appropriately. So when possible, use a layout that has a title, even if it's a title that's repeated multiple times. So I'm going to title this one Slide Basics, and that's my title. The content placeholder below, this is a content placeholder. It's different than the title placeholder in that it has these 6 buttons in the center of the placeholder. These are used to insert objects like tables, smart art, emojis, images, video. The default is text, so I can click here to add some text to my layout. So PowerPoint contains slides. Make sure I watch my capitalization here. PowerPoint contains slides, layouts, and layouts contain placeholders. And these are words you should be familiar with when we're talking about a PowerPoint presentation, so placeholders. So I want to make sure that I choose a layout that is appropriate, has the appropriate placeholders for the type of information I want to present. And I'm going to add a new slide again just to practice that skill. So I'm going to go new slide. This time I'm going to add a 2 content slide layout, and I'm going to click on 2 content and add slide. And once again, even though I'm repeating information from a previous slide, I want to add a title regardless. Slide Basics. And on the left-hand side, I'm going to put in some things that slides can contain. So slides can contain text, like we have here, video, images, shapes, tables, etc. So there's multiple things you can put into a slide. You'll notice that when I'm typing, I'm automatically getting the bullets, which is part of the default behavior for PowerPoint. You typically do not use long form text. You will use short form or point form text for your slides, and avoid long form or paragraph text unless it's absolutely necessary. Remember that a presentation is meant to be readable at a distance, and it's much easier to read point form text than it is to read long form text in paragraph format. So use point form wherever possible. The second thing to be aware of is as I'm doing this presentation, you'll notice that I'm not doing any formatting. I'm not attempting to change any colors. I'm not attempting to change any font or sizes. I like to not do that until the very end. Content first, format last. So I'm going to put the content of my slides into the presentation before I attempt to do any formatting. So I have text on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side here, I'm going to just quickly do a quick image search, and I'm going to insert a picture into my slide. It's just that easy. So this slide is a 2-content layout. I have a left-hand placeholder, a right-hand placeholder, and a title placeholder. Now, you can have multiple slides in a presentation. There's no technical limit to the number of slides except the length of your audience's attention span. But to make your life easier, there's some ways to duplicate slides if you want to repeat the same slide over and over again, or just have the same structure of slide repeated. I can duplicate a slide by simply clicking on the slide that I want to duplicate, and then I'm going to do a right click on the slide, and I'm going to choose duplicate slide. And that will create a duplicate of the original slide directly below the slide, and I now have 2 identical ones. I could go in and change this if I wanted to with new information. I can also reorder slides by clicking and dragging the slides into new positions. Just drag slide 4 into position 2, so now the presentation would go in this order. And that's clicking and dragging slides into position. To delete an existing slide that you don't need, you can simply click on the thumbnail and press on your keyboard the delete key. Alternately, you can also right-click on the slide and you do have the option to delete the slide. For changing a slide, once you've changed a slide, for example, here I've got a slide basics with 2 content placeholders, so it's title and 2 content. Maybe on this slide I actually want to put an image over here. Rather than inserting an image directly into the slide, what I would do in this case is change the layout of the slide. I can change the layout of an existing slide after I've already created it. So I'm choosing slide 2, and I'm in the home ribbon, and this button here brings up layout, and it allows me to switch the layout. So I'm going to change slide 2 to a 2 content layout, and I'm going to click change layout. And that adds a placeholder on this side. And again, I'm going to go in and I'm going to add a picture. Now let's pick something different, and I'm going to insert that. So it's that easy to change the layout. So slides, 3 slides in the presentation, title layout, 2 content layout, and also 2 content layout. And both these slides have images in them. Organizing we've covered, where you drag and drop them into a new position. This is easy enough when you have 3 slides in your presentation, but if you have more slides in your presentation, it can get a little more complicated. So I'm going to switch my view, and I'm going to the view ribbon, and I'm going to go to slide sorter. In slide sorter view, I have the slides without the editing area. I have the slides here, so you can imagine if I had 20 or more slides, it'd be a lot easier to organize or rearrange the slides in slide sorter view than it is in normal view. Normal view is what we use for editing, and I can switch back to normal view by going to the view menu and clicking normal. That returns me to my normal view where I can continue editing the presentation. So we've done moving, deleting, duplication. Okay. If I want to change something about a placeholder, for example here, I don't like the way the text is up here and the image is down here, I can actually move these placeholders into a new position. As you can see, I'm clicking and dragging on the image, and as I do that, I have guides pop up that show me where my alignment is, and this one tells me I'm aligned with the top of that paragraph, and I can drop it there. I can move the slide. I'm going to do the same thing with the cat. I'm going to move it so that it's lined up with the top there. If I want to make a placeholder bigger, I can by grabbing a corner. Okay, not always appropriate, because what you want to avoid is where the image overlaps the text, but you can do that. So you can rearrange the size of an individual placeholder at any time by simply grabbing a corner. Be wary of the corners at the side, because as you can see, when you grab a side instead of a corner, you can resize and make your image out of proportion if it is an image in the presentation. If you've done something you don't want to do, a quick Control-Z will undo your latest change. Okay, so placeholders can be moved around. They can even be switched. So I can actually switch these around, move them over onto the other side, and this one over here. So you can move them around by grabbing the border. Make sure when you want to move them that you're grabbing the border, not one of the corners, because as I mentioned, the corners will actually resize rather than move. I'm going to undo that though. Control-Z, 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 Control-Z. Okay, back to the original. Control Z is my undo button. The reason why I'm undoing that is that slides also have a reading order, which is usually top to bottom, left to right. So if you're moving placeholders around, it will change the order. So this will read, the computer will read this title, left side, then right side. If I switch them around, visually my audience will see automatically they would look at here, then they would look at the image, and then they would look at the text. For accessibility reasons, though, that isn't the case. The computer does not know visual, it knows order. So it's going to still read it, slide basics, then it's going to read the text, and then it's going to read the image out. So you want to avoid moving around placeholders necessarily, so that you avoid accidentally messing up the reading order of the slide. Okay, I'm going to go to Home Ribbon, because Home Ribbon is where most of my commands are to work with the slide. I can use a new slide, and I can use a blank layout. This one is typical for things like videos or things that you want to take up the entire screen. Like if you have a particularly large image or diagram, you can use a blank placeholder. And for that, just be aware that there's no control, there are no buttons here that allow you to add content to the slide. So in this case, what I have to do is I have to manually insert information from the insert ribbon. So I can insert pictures, shapes, smart art, text box, etc. So I can actually insert from the ribbon. And in this case, I'm going to quickly click online video, and I'm going to grab a quick YouTube. And we'll go with my favorite swimming owl. Okay, here's my swimming owl. I'm going to grab the video ribbon, Control C.
Grammarly can help.
Close that.
This sentence.
And paste that URL into my slide. Don't worry about videos. We'll be repeating this step again for later, but this just shows you how you can insert something into a slide if you don't have a content placeholder with buttons. And here's an object that I can resize, and I can make the video large inside the ribbon. So you can add things to a blank placeholder using the insert ribbon, and these are the various things that you can add to a blank slide layout. But blank slide layout should typically be avoided unless it's absolutely necessary, because it does break accessibility. This slide does not have a title that can be read out by a screen reader. So the better alternative to a blank slide is to use one of the slide layouts that has a title and then hide the title, rather than use a blank layout. And I'm going to go back to my home ribbon. So I have now 4 slides in my presentation. And what I want to do now is briefly show you how to format the background of a particular slide. So I'm going to click on the particular slide that I'm on, which is the video slide. I'm going to do a right click on the slide, and that's not going to help me, is it? To the Design tab. So the Design tab allows me to change the background. So in the Design tab, I'm going to go to Background, and I have options in terms of what I want to do for the background of the slide. I can use a solid fill, and in this case I'm going to do black. That gives me a nice black background on my presentation on this particular slide. Once I've done that, I can also choose to pick another color if I don't like the one that I've chosen. And I'm going to stick with black because it looks best. And I can also choose to apply that to all my slides at once. That can be problematic, because you can see here I have black text on a black background, which makes them all invisible. So I'm going to do a quick Control Z. But if you pick a background color that you like, you can quickly apply to all by using the Apply All button here in Design Background. But right now I'm just going to keep the black text only on the single one with the video. And the other thing I can do with my presentation, as I've mentioned up to this point, I've been doing it in black and white, very simple, somewhat boring. But I've always done the content part first and then worrying about the design. In your Design tab, you also have the option of setting a design for your presentation. So you can choose any one of the preset designs that are available to you. And by simply clicking on the design that you like, each one has an individual name. So if you point at it, you'll see the name come up underneath. This is Atlas. I'm going to choose Atlas. and it goes through my presentation. As you can see, it applies a background and it applies formatting to the content placeholders, and it applies some nice looking attractive sidebar stuff. Once you've done a design though, it does do sometimes odd things, so you might have to go in and fix after you've done the design. So I have to go in here and rearrange this so that it makes a little bit more visual sense. So you can use the design tab and then make sure you go through each individual slide to make sure you don't have any overlapping issues. So this is the Atlas design, and once I've chosen a design, I can choose a different palette for the design, and this applies to the entire presentation. It doesn't apply to a single slide. The design applies to the entire presentation. And that is how you create a quick and simple PowerPoint presentation that looks pretty nifty.